Episode 3.
Yes.
This time you're in the spotlight. So, question again, what's plagued me for all my life, or sort of gym life, should I say, is the perfect macro split. Okay. What should it be for general population? Does that need to change depending on the sport? Which I kind of already know, but I want to get your idea on that. I want to know what is the best macro split
For
and percentages?
For who? Because you did mention general population.
I'm going to reel off a loads of different people. All right.
I'll roll my sleeves for this.
So I'm talking now the general population. I'm talking like the middle-aged woman, middle-aged male, generally normal activity levels, nothing too crazy, likes to go to the gym, not too invested in it, but just for the general person.
General person. General person is obviously...
I want to tell what is a macro nutrient?
Macronutrients. Well, you have protein, carbs, and fats, the main macronutrients. You could put alcohol in there as well, because it has its own kind of category in terms of calories. So like protein has 4 calories per gram, carbs 4 as well, fat 9, and alcohol has 7. So
that's good to know. So alcohol has 7 calories per gram.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And general population is always tricky. And okay, if we talk middle-aged, so generally everyone has issues with protein. And I've seen some backlash online recently about protein. We're saying that protein is over-marketed to people and the general population is already eating enough protein. From every single client I've ever worked with, and I've worked with athletes and general population, always the protein is too low. Like, whereas what they're saying, because the marketing is so focused on most of the foods on like because you'll go and you'll see like these like muesli bars and like it would say high protein, or like you would see it on a lot of foods that the protein is heavily marketed, but that doesn't actually reflect the reality that people are over consuming protein. Like it's complete opposite.
But high protein is always like a gram or 2 more, right?
Yeah, it's
like, not much.
Yeah, like they would put...
You get protein Weetabix.
Yeah, like sometimes they would do just like, oh, this is a source of protein, instead of saying it's high in protein. And then you look at the packages, they're like 3 grams per 100 grams. Like, thanks, like it's not going to save my life. But yeah, the issue is the most people are just not eating enough. And especially if you go like middle-aged and like elderly population, they struggle a lot. And when I was at Leeds Beckett University, when I was doing my master's, there was an ongoing research trying to figure out how to pretty much fight sarcopenia, which is the deterioration. Yes, that's the word, of muscle mass in elderly population. Because what happens is, as you get older, you have less appetite for foods, and you struggle more and more to get enough protein. And also, you don't exercise enough most of the time, so the muscle loss is just rapid.
Now, is that because you don't absorb or use the protein as efficiently or as you was when you was younger, or is that through something else?
That's a simple hormonal responses as you age. It's just like an aging process. And this question of how do we get more protein into elderly population is very tricky, because so what they were testing at that time at my uni was protein gels, because you can obviously use protein shakes, you can use protein bars, but like it seemed like none of these like really help people to get more protein in. That it's just not palatable enough for them and easy to digest. And also, there's the factor like you also want to enjoy it a bit. So they're testing the gels, and it seemed to have way better effect than both of these.
So protein gels
with elderly, it seemed.
Okay.
But like since then, there's probably been more research. I haven't really looked at that, but it is a huge problem. And exercise too, because exercise and enough protein is what keeps your muscle on your body.
Absolutely.
So, and general population, same issue. Everyone is not eating enough protein. So whoever tells you that people are over consuming protein, most likely is not true. I've literally seen maybe 1 or 2 clients who are over consuming, and both of them were athletes, and both of them were CrossFit athletes. So
protein,
that's the paleo movement in CrossFit is kind of ridiculous. I think it kind of slowed down a bit now, but
so we know protein's obviously super important, and for the general population, people do tend to be eating too little protein. So what is a typical goal? Because I've heard, what is it, like 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilo of body weight? Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's very correct. So 1.6 is like I would say gold standard now. But the range is like, it goes from, I would say the minimum is 1.2. 1.2 grams per kilogram of your body weight is like super minimum. If you don't exercise, you live sedentary lifestyle, like that should be your minimum.
Yeah.
Most people like would struggle to hit that unless you're like super heavy meat eater and like you literally just eat meat. And the upper end, there is no upper end really in terms of how much you can eat, because so there is this common myth in terms of protein, and the weird thing is that it's still, to my knowledge, it's still being taught at dietetics, and that's why, when we talked last time, how these different approaches work in terms of nutrition. In dietetics, there's this thing still going on that, like, if you eat too much protein, it's going to damage your kidneys. Okay. Which is just a complete... There's literally zero evidence saying that. So I don't understand why it's still going on. Like, it's been debunked like 40 or 50 years ago, and it's still going on, and it doesn't help anyone. If anything, that like deepens the problem of people being almost like feared of protein.
Of eating a steak.
Yeah.
So again, we've got that range. So you would advocate more elderly population, and depending on their activity levels, to go further up the protein scale there.
That's when it gets difficult, because they probably wouldn't be able to eat it. That's why.
So you're talking about elderly patients there.
So yeah, if we think about the elderly population, if we talk like about, let's say, a 60 years old plus, you want to be like around the 1.6. Anything above that might be too challenging to consume. Okay. Unless you implement the supplements in it.
But as a general sort of population, who's someone who's a little bit more active in terms of likes to do the weekend warrior stuff, going to the gym a little bit more sort of rigorous than the average person, you'd probably want to bump up their protein. Would you?
Not necessarily. That starts depending on their activity and their goal. Okay. So if you're someone who wants to build as much muscle as possible, I would probably bump it up to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. That would be the best start for any type of bodybuilding. If you're like the type of athlete who likes to do more like endurance stuff, I would definitely try to focus on the 1.6, but if that impairs your performance, I would go even lower. And
lower protein.
Lower and increase the carbs, because then it actually improves the performance. Like the performance benefit is higher than You know, you'll still build and maintain muscle even on lower than 1.6. But if the 1.6 is too much and it impairs your performance in your endurance endeavors, that is not worth it, essentially.
Well, let's talk about fats. So how much fats should the average person need?
Maybe I'll add just this little thing to make it a bit more like structured. So if you think about protein, carbs, fats, the main reason you have protein, let's say, build muscle mass. So build muscle mass, carbs, energy levels, fats, hormones, and health.
Okay.
That's like the easy way how to think about these macronutrients. Then generally what you do, how you like just to give people some actual practical advice, when you're building your macros, you start with protein, set your protein, right? Let's say 1.2 to 2 grams, depending on 1.2 grams per kilogram to 2 grams per kilogram, depending on what activity you're doing. But if you just bang on mid of 1.6, that's probably the best start. So you do that first, then you set up your fats, minimum fats, and then the rest is carbs.
Just pack it out with carbs.
Yeah, just carb up.
Well, that's made it so simple.
Sorry?
Well, that makes it really simple.
It's super simple. Like, people overcomplicate it.
So how much fats does the average normal person need?
Right, so that depends on, again, how much you weigh and also if you're male or female because of the hormonal aspect. So anywhere between, so it would be 0.6 to 1 gram per kilogram of your body weight, where the 1 gram per kilogram of body weight would be the upper limit. And I would say that's like the minimum for hormonal health. And you want to keep it at minimum because there is no really added benefits to having more fats.
Say them numbers again.
0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram of body weight.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was when you did mine for my triathlon.
Yes.
I was at 80 grams of fat.
Yeah. So you could eyeball it and say 50 grams of fat for women and 80 grams for males. As a general rule. But if you want to be very specific, you put it grams per kilogram. And yeah, the simple reason is you just want to cover the basics of hormonal health and general health with the fats, and the rest just put into carbs if you want to perform.
I've got so much question about fats. What will just take us down a massive rabbit hole. Because when you did my programming, my nutritional stuff, I just didn't really know what fats were for. I was just like, fats make you fat, right? You know, so I mean, like for hormone levels and all the bits of information you gave me, I found that very interesting. So, you know, I think that'll be another thing to dive deep in.
Oh yeah, there could be like a podcast on its own.
Yeah, but 3-part. All right, okay. So we know that our fats is 0.5 to 1 gram per kilo of body weight, and that's taken into account from fat from protein sources, and then solely from fat sources as well. Okay.
And also there are different types of fats. So ideally, you don't want to have the whole fat content focused on one type of fat. There's this one, like a free kind of way rule that it should be really divided into 3 parts, like saturated, polyunsaturated, monounsaturated fats, to have the right balance of everything. And yeah, that's how complicated it really gets. And then the rest you just put into carbs because you want to perform. Like usually the good example is like if you're someone who is eating, let's say, just 100 grams of carbs and if you exercise and you're athlete, or even, to be fair, even if you're working a lot with your mind, like at work, you're probably going to find out that if you lower your fat and increase your carbs, your performance is going to be way better. Like people underestimate and demonize carbs for some reason, even though it's the main energy source for the muscle and the brain. Your brain runs on glucose, pretty much. So
absolutely.
I would advise people to test it out. Like if you're someone who eats too much fat, try to put it to minimum, increase your carbs, and you will see how you feel.
Yeah, because I was coming into this little chat and I was thinking, okay, what is the best macro split in terms of percentages? Because when I was doing it back in the day, and I don't really work on percentages now, I don't really do much nutritional stuff, if I'm being honest with you. I just eat a ton of rice all the time because I love it. But I used to do like 35% protein, 25% fat, 40% carbohydrate, and that now just massively complicates things, right?
That's percentages. Like throughout my studies, we've never talked about percentages.
Yeah, because we just said there's a change of things. So basically, what I want to do, say if I'm a CrossFit athlete, likes to train 5-6 times a week, and essentially all I'm going to do is first off get my protein source. Okay.
Yeah.
That's going to be anywhere between 1.6, which would be a baseline for the majority, just general population. As a CrossFit athlete, I may push it up a little bit more.
You don't need to.
No?
Especially as a CrossFit athlete, I would say 1.6. Bang on.
So 1.6
because of the intensity of CrossFit and how much glycogen you probably need.
So then we work out 1.6 times me, 85 kilo male, whatever that would be. Then from there, we're going to whack in 80 grams of carbs, and then fat, and then the rest of it is just all in with the carbohydrates.
Yes.
Dead easy when you say it like that, isn't it?
It is that easy, and that's why you have so many calculators online. You know, like because it is very easy. It's like the most difficult part is obviously tracking it and staying consistent, and like actually, I would say. Difficult part is like estimating how much you actually need per day, how much calories you need. So you would use like Harris-Benedict equation for that. That's probably the best one.
Yeah.
Don't really trust your watch. I got Apple Watch, but like a lot of them they work with these equations, but like they tend to either over or underestimates your exercise a lot. So usually that's when the experience I think comes in, especially with the nutritionists. When they calculating calories, they need to be able to, kind of guesstimate how much you actually need for your activity and how much you need on your rest days if it's any huge difference. Because if someone tells you you calculate a basal metabolic rate, which is pretty much the amount of calories you need just to lie in bed and breathe. Then you have to time the number with activity factor. And as soon as you start moving, that would be like 1.2. Like 1.2 is still considered sedentary lifestyle. And it's very difficult to be just sedentary. Like you literally have to probably work from home and don't like pretty much move. So that's when it becomes difficult.
So I guess it becomes like a lot of trial and error in terms of knowing how much calories you need, and then also adjusting the protein and then filtering out the fats and carbs on top of that. But how long would you give it to trial it for any errors and then change it?
Oh, a week.
A week?
You can change it within a week.
Yeah, so you'd notice. Okay.
Yeah, like it's simple maths, right? Like you put a certain number in, let your client try it or let yourself try it, and as long as you continually use scales for your weight, for your body weight, just monitor your body weight and how you feel.
And you're specifically talking about losing weight.
Yeah, because that's how you figure out whether your calories are like maintenance calories or you are in a deficit. And you can even, like, based on how much you lost, you can kind of guesstimate in what deficit you actually are.
I guess you could do. Could you? Would so obviously that's for weight in terms if you want to lose weight, gain weight. But if a person's saying they're still hungry, obviously from my understanding, the satiety comes from protein.
Yeah,
No,
and some carbs.
and some carbs. So
like
what
vegetables.
what would you adjust there? If my goal is performance and I'm still hungry, would you still give that like a trial week period and then adjust it up from there, or would you give it a little bit longer if their diets drastically change?
Yeah,
and
like
adapted?
that's why you have weekly check-ins, because you adjust it week by week basis.
Okay,
and
so a week is a good.
Yeah, a
amount
week
of
is a
time to
good
try it.
indicator. Yeah. And yeah, satiety, it is a problem. A lot of it is psychological, because for some people it might be a big change in what they're eating, because a lot of the times what happens is people very underestimate how much they're actually eating, and it's very easy to overeat with fats. And fats have the highest amount of calories out of all macronutrients, so that's why it's very, very tricky to deal with it afterwards. But generally, yeah, if you're in a deficit, you're probably going to feel hungry. Like that's just like one thing you have to accept, and then you're just dealing with the hunger, because there are certain things you can do in terms of your diet to like fight the hunger and your cravings and all of that. So yeah, maybe people would be asking, so is there any point where you would switch to fats and have higher fat and low carb? And I would say like no. Like,
So really, the only two variables is going to be your protein intake and your carbohydrate intake.
mostly it's just like protein and fat should be like the standardized thing, and you just move carbs, right? Especially if you're an athlete, because that's your main performance driver. When you're dealing with a lot of non-training days and like days where you want to enjoy yourself, obviously, then you have to work out, okay, so I'm going to sacrifice these amount of carbs for this amount of fat just because I want to go out with friends. That's definitely an option, because I'm not training today, so I don't need that much glycogen in my muscles. So that's definitely viable. So like you pretty much, protein is always like the same, and then you just tweaking fats and carbs depending on what you're doing, really, because you want to perform to the best of your ability. I mean, because pretty much if you think about it, carbs, if you have more carbs, it means you have more energy. More energy means you do more work in the gym. More work in the gym equals more gains.
Bigger biceps.
Yeah, bigger biceps. Better performance overall. It's pretty simple. The only way, like, obviously there's going to be probably some endurance athletes, like fat adapted endurance athletes, maybe listening to this and say, well, but I run marathon or ultra marathons on fats and I feel better. And I was like, yeah, good for you. I mean, the only possible endurance event which could benefit from fat adaptation and having higher fat is probably the ultra endurance.
So lower their fats.
No, higher fat.
Higher fats for ultra endurance.
Yes, that could, like, it could work, because ultra endurance is obviously anything above marathon.
Yeah.
So if you think at marathon that you probably, I mean, if you're really good, or 2.5 hours, 3 hours. So that's, I would say, the threshold of glycogen in terms of how much you can, because glycogen store is going to get depleted within like 1 hour, like 60 to 90 minute mark. So then you have to have strategies to put more glucose in. Whereas like if you're fat adapted and you're running for a longer period of time, it's not as high intensity. So you might, it might be more beneficial to have, I wouldn't say just fat, but like a mixture, with the mixture being higher in fat.
Yeah.
But yeah, these athletes are very rare, And also, you have pretty much unlimited amount of fat in your body. So, I mean, that's a bold statement, unlimited, but like pretty good amount.
Okay. I think that's covered very, very well. Covered very, very well. So, to summarize, no specific percentage split. A good.
I mean, obviously, if you take these grams per kilograms, you can adjust them and make them percentages, but it's just difficult to calculate.
Yeah, and that's what I've always thought. But generally speaking, 1.6 to 2 for protein, 8.5 to 1 gram fat per kilo of body weight, and then fill up the rest depending on where your calories are set, depending on your age, your activity levels, what your sort of goals are, what sort of training you're doing, and then the carbohydrates just fills that number in.
Exactly. Yeah. Adjust carbs to training.
Hey?
Carbs and fats, just adjust to training and non-training days, and that's it.
Perfect.
Good.
All right, there we go. Science 101. Done.
Because just to add a bit of context, we worked together when you were doing the Ironman.
The triathlon.
Triathlon, sorry, not Ironman. Triathlon, and that was the Olympic distance.
So 1.5 K swim, 40K bike, 10K run.
Yeah. So you have an experience of doing the performance nutrition to that level, pretty much, endurance, and you have experience of feeling energetic on carbs and how it changed. So
because first off, I had to lose some weight. So that's about 87 kilo. So we got down to about 80, 81 kilo.
Yeah.
Which is massive for me because I always hover around about 85, 86. And I remember my heart rate was jacked when I was running, when I was on a low diet. I can't remember what the percentage was, but it was always about 80 grams of fat, and the protein was just standard protein. I think it was about 120 grams per day. Would that be right?
I can't remember. I would have to look at
around about 120, maybe 130, and the rest was carbohydrates, which was about 150 at the time. And I can remember when I was running, I used to my watch, like my heart rate was like going through the roof, all right, and I felt depleted. And I can remember, obviously, I was on a 2,000 calorie strict diet to bring my weight down, and then we literally bumped up the carbohydrates and nothing else. I think it went from 150 to about 200 grams of carbohydrates.
I think even more.
It might have been, it could even be more actually.
Yeah.
And basically it was an extra 500 calories a day.
Yeah.
But that 500 calories was from carbohydrates. And I felt like Superman running around. I can remember like my heart rate come down, you know, the amount of energy, the energy increase was a big difference. A hell of a big difference. And then obviously, I think the 3 days leading up to the triathlon, I think I was on about 3,000 calories. 3,000 calories, or 400 grams of carbohydrates, I think it was, before. These are all off the top of my head, I can't remember accurate. But yeah, and then on the day of the race, you know, hit my target. So it was great.
But more than your target.
Yeah, more than my target, More than my target. 2 hour 25 I got.
Did you not get 222? I think it was 222.
Was it 222? It was something like that. I can't remember. I know I'd done 43 minutes for the 10K run, 27 minutes for the swim, and I think the bike was 1 hour 15, something like that. Yeah. Then whatever that adds up to. Yeah. And then the transitions in between, which was like 5 minutes transitions. It was so long.
And you didn't consume anything during, or did you?
It's a good question. I was thinking about that actually earlier when you were talking about them sachets. That jogged my mind. I don't think I did. I don't know if I did or not. I can't remember. I definitely didn't have anything on the run. I might have took something at the end of my bike before I got into my run.
Because I think we were talking about using the gels.
Yeah, I had gels. I got the gels, but I can't remember if I used them or not. Anyway,
Yeah.
didn't need it.
Cars are king.